because there's this thing that I call the itty bitty shitty committee. It sits on our shoulder.
I love that.
It's a little voice that we talk to, and it can be negative. And frequently we say things and children start saying things to themselves as well.
Hey folks, this week I got a chance to sit down with Kari Sutton, an educator, a speaker, a writer about mental health, and specifically mental health with children. She's helped over 25,000 kids across Australia and educators use tools specifically designed to help take care of this epidemic that we have going on right now, which is anxiety and depression in our youth. And she's an amazing lady. We dive deep into the tools that she has. It's in her book. It's a fantastic book, The 10 Tools, about how we can help ourselves and our children have better mental fitness in this day and age. I hope you enjoy this episode of The Well Faculty with Kari Sutton. Kari, welcome to the podcast. Awesome to have you on today.
Thank you, Jason. Great to be here.
We've known each other for a while, and I know we have a bit of a passion in common and a bit of a history in common, which is from the schooling world. I was a teacher for 6 years, and you've been a teacher for over 22 years now.
Actually, with the grey hair that you most probably can't see, but the grey hair is there, and it's been around 28 years now, which is a bit frightening, really.
Oh, there you go. Well, it's going to be awesome today. I've enjoyed your book. Well, give it a bit of a plug, Raising a Mentally Fit Generation, which is awesome. And, you've poured some wisdom and some amazing practical tools into that book for parents. But really, at the end of the day, what's surprising for me, having a look at the book, and also, a passion in this world as a parent of 3 myself, and also a teacher in the past with young people, the challenges that are out there right now, where we're seeing sort of the rise of quite a lot of anxiety and, mental health issues in our younger generation. It'd be great to sort of, dive into that a bit later on and sort of get some wisdom from you as an expert and also a parent. I know your kids have offered learning experiences like mine over the years as well. So, for those parents listening in, but just, first to kick off, it's been a big 18 months, really for the whole world, the world of COVID. Did that really accelerate anything in your world with kids and those sorts of things? Give us a bit of, understanding what's going on.
It has, Jace. It really has, Jason. It's COVID has increased everybody's level of anxiety, and that children are sponges, particularly little children, but all children are sponges, and they will pick up on what's going on in households, what's going on in society, and particularly through social media. So a lot of our kids are now switched on and connected a lot of the time. So when you and I were growing up, it was possibly we could go home and shut the door, and unless the news was on the television, we most probably weren't picking up as much of what was happening. Now, yes, the past 18 months it's been unprecedented. So I absolutely acknowledge that. But it's also happening in a time of unprecedented connection and connectivity, where there is a 24, if not even more than a 24-hour news cycle where things are churning over, but it's so quick, so rapid.
Yeah.
And when we as adults are stressed and anxious, children can't help but get stressed and anxious because we are that safe pair of hands that holds them as parents and as extended family. We are normally the ones that are giving that safety net, that feels secure, that feels safe. And the past 18 months hasn't been that way for a lot of the time.
For a lot of people, yeah. Let's quickly talk about that, because you just said it about, kids are sponges, and that's one of my bugbears or things that I decided a long time ago, even before I had children. I decided to turn the news off. I don't consume any mainstream media without being intentional about it. And I did that 28 years ago. But one thing that I was thinking about is that, kids are sponges. Sometimes as parents, we might not be appreciating the surrounding information or data or stuff that's coming out and potentially indirectly influencing our kids, the news, like you said, social media, those sorts of things. Like what can people do about that? Like how is there sort of ideas that you could share?
Yeah, interesting you say that, because even before COVID happened, I was facilitating for a group in a workplace last year. And this was before COVID had started. So it was in February. And we were talking about well-being, so about adult well-being. But I was also saying, look, children pick up on our levels of well-being and children pick up on that. And we need to monitor our intake of news, our media diet. And it was fascinating. One parent walked up to me at the end, and a father, and he said, Kari, I can validate everything you say. We were only listening to the ABC. He was in the car with me going to and from school. And yet he came home one afternoon and said, Daddy, am I going to die from COVID, or are you going to die? And he said, I didn't think, I thought I was being really switched on. We were only listening to the ABC at home and in the car. But what he was picking up on is a level of angst that he was hearing about a lot of people dying, that this was going to kill people. And he was 8 years old. And you can imagine the stress of an 8-year-old hearing that people are dying, or that this disease is coming. We really do have to be so incredibly careful around what we surround our children's brains with, what we surround absolutely, because
awareness.
You wouldn't let somebody come in and spew negativity all over you, yet that's what's often happening when our kids, frequently when they go to school often, because there will be conversations in the playground. So it may not be happening with us because we're being very intentional, but in the playground at school, everybody's got a device now almost, and everybody can say, oh, hey, have you seen this latest thing? And that's the sort of stuff we have to be really intentional about. What are we allowing in? Now, we're not cotton wooling our kids. What we're doing is actually preventing their negativity bias, because we all have a negativity bias. That's what keeps us alive.
Well, I suppose as a young person, your ability to sort of, make meaning from those things is probably not as good or as developed as an adult. I do remember my brother, when he was young, 8 or 9 years old, the first time he absorbed some information about nuclear bombs, and it was months that he had night terrors and woke up every night thinking we were all going to die from nuclear bombs. And that was vivid for me, and that it brings up those things. So that brings up something that I'd love to ask you about as you go along. You worked with over 25,000 kids in your career, in teaching and counseling and so on. The schoolyard's a pretty intense place, and sometimes I think maybe even I'm saying that in a nice way, it can be pretty brutal. I remember growing up, and it was kind of a war zone out there, in some aspects. And like you said, you could do the greatest work at home, but potentially the schoolyard can be a little bit full on. What conversations or encouragements or feedback would you give to parents listening in right now, when you feel a bit nervous about sending your children to the school?
Cool. A good, really great question. And part of it it really starts when they're very young. And because there's this thing that I call the itty bitty shitty committee, it sits on our shoulder.
I love that.
It's a little voice that we talk to, and it can be negative. And frequently we say things, and children start saying things to themselves as well. When I studied with Martin Seligman, and I was talking to him about what I was seeing in classrooms, and I said, I'm looking at this, and it's the rise in anxiety and depression. And this was in the early 2000s. And he said to me, Kari, if we can stop that negative self-talk as soon as children start to talk, it stops it. He believes we could actually halve the rates of depression. And what we have to do is give our kids the tools and skills. We are never going to be able to protect our children from life. Life has its ups and downs.
Yep.
We need to actually teach them the skills to sit with discomfort, to sit with disappointment, but also to be assertive enough to know when to go, actually, I can walk away from that person, or I need to walk away from that person.
Yeah.
I often teach kids the friendship 5, like these are the 5 things good friends would do. If somebody's not doing things other than that, are they really a good friend? And do you need to stay friends with them? Because that's the sort of stuff, and it is hard when kids desperately want to fit in. And I know my kid desperately wanted to fit in, and you do almost anything.
Yeah.
But we give them that strength and knowledge. We've got you, we love you, and these are the sorts of values we have.
Yeah. And I like that because, we were just chatting off air, and you and I have talked about this before. I've got 3 kids, and my first 2, we thought this is a breeze. It wasn't easy, but certainly we felt like we achieved things and we did a good job. It was stressful, late nights, all sorts of stuff. But and then our beautiful 3rd gift came along, and our beautiful Jakey is on the spectrum, and a whole different world experience for me opened up, and really, I think the gift of that, certainly for me as a parent, is the idea that, being able to help him, it just had to be in a different way. Like, having little skills like that, the friendly 5, and having little models, and he, he's got a counselor that he goes and sees, once a week, and it helps him endlessly. And it broke down, I think for me, certainly a huge amount of, what do you call it? Maybe, just, ignorance on my behalf about, the way things might be. And it was an amazing gift. And it's still a gift that keeps giving right now. And I know you and I've chatted about that, in the world of, atypical, or,
Yeah.
not, yeah.
We have a lot of diverse little people in our lives,
Yeah.
and what is considered, and the listeners can't, but normal, what is normal? We all have our little quirks,
Yeah.
and we are all beautiful, unique individuals. And I talk to parents about valuing those and really looking at your kids' strengths. Absolutely. If there's something that's going to get in their way in life, so so with Jake, it might have been organization, his ability to organize things or do things like that. We teach them, so that might be called a lesser, like a weakness, and that's where you go, I can teach skills to address that problem. But it's tapping into their strengths, because that's when kids, you can see it when their strengths get tapped into, their chest puffs out, and they
Yes.
just go, hey, I can do something. We all want to know that we can contribute, that we're worthwhile, and that we are valued.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's an interesting one, the way you can communicate that, because not all kids are the same, not all people are the same, and we all see and hear, those sorts of, call it a love language, call it, how we're valued, in different ways, which is cool. And really, at the end of the day, I suppose that's kind of, the encouragement, as a parent or even a human, to sort of be more aware of the diversity, and sort of be open to learning new skills and new ways to, number one, manage yourself, and help your beautiful, amazing kids along the way. Because every parent, wants the best for their children. Sometimes, as my parents did, they did the best they could, but it wasn't great,
Yep.
but they did the best they could, so.
But Jason, look, even look at how you turned out. So their parents do the best with what they have at the
Yes.
time, and that's why I say to kids, even teenagers, look, they're trying their hardest. They love you, they care about you, they're trying their best. And these are the sorts of things. And yeah, they might get it wrong, because sometimes parents get it wrong. But as I say to parents, there is no manual, there is no right or wrong way, as long as you're not abusing physically, psychologically, or emotionally your kids. The 99.999% of parents I've ever worked with have wanted to do the best for their children. And even when they're cotton wooling, that they think that that's the best thing, because they don't want to see their kids go through pain. And you
Yeah.
realize I have to talk to them and say, look, we actually need our kids to experience that, because as we hold them in that safe family unit, that's when they'll learn, hey, this pain is not going to kill me. I can get through it.
I can get stronger from that. Let's
Yeah.
talk about kids and media, because you mentioned that before. A device. Everyone's got one on the playground, and certainly, I feel a little bit old when I say this. Back in our day, it was, the media was, maybe the radio and the,
Yep.
the 6 o'clock news or whatever. And that was for half an hour. But now it's like, if you want to, it can be constant, endless, bombardment. One of the things that I certainly had a small amount of experience in because of, my limited public profile in my business, but also now the world of TikTok and Snapchat and endless, putting yourself out there to strangers all over the world potentially, and having this feedback loop that can be quite, probably not the right word, damaging
damaging. Jason, damaging is the right word, because particularly for children and young people, is that, as you said before, we have filters. We as adults can go, you know what? Yeah, no, don't like that one. Let's get rid of that one, or whatever it is. So we can actually manage these. And I'm not saying our young people, particularly our teens and adolescents, they can manage it to a certain degree, but there's still, it's not and I hate to say a hardened filter, but there's a filter that we develop as adults to go, you know what, we know that person isn't in our lives. They don't mean anything to us. So really their comment's not valid. Yeah. Whereas teenagers and children particularly still can't weed that out. And that's why I talk to parents and educators a lot and say, between the years of most probably, from birth to around 9 or 10, even if it's a throwaway comment, children can take hold of that. And that's often what that itty bitty shitty committee sounds like, which is, oh, you're never going to be any good at maths. Oh, da 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 da. And you often, when you say to adults, what does that voice say? And they'll go back and say, yeah, it sounds like a teacher I had who said this about me. It sounds like a parent I had, like one of my parents said those sorts of things. Yeah. And now it's becoming on social media. That's the feedback I got from social media. Everybody told me I was a fat cow. Yeah. And you realize, there have to be limits around that. There have to be rules. I love Michael Greg's rule. His kids are grown up now, but when I was talking to him about it, he said, Kari, my kids hated me in their teens, like we were early teens. And I said, what happened? And he said, we had a rule. The phones, all of our phones. One, we never used them at meal times, and we always sat down for an evening meal together, so they'd go there. But at 8:30 at night, all of our devices got put on a table. And the reason I really love that is because these are some of the things that take our children's sleep away, particularly our teenagers. If they're pinging in the middle of the night, that gives our kids, it's almost like, and they become the amygdala, because when fear of missing out is a real thing, especially with teenagers. Absolutely. And when it pings, that's when the amygdala goes off, and it's a fight or flight situation to a certain degree. And that's when their amygdala becomes heightened. Oh, it's pinged, I have to respond. Oh, let me look at that comment, because it is always turned on, always turned on, always firing. So what he did was he said, I could now be the big bad person who gave them a reason they didn't have to respond at night. So when the kids went to school, why weren't you talking to me at 2 a.m. in the morning? Oh, yeah, my dad's a real bastard. He makes me put my phone on the thing, and I just don't have it. That's the rule in our house. And so it took the blame off them and put it onto him. Yeah. And I think it's really important to have something like that, because what we've seen on TikTok, the things that have been inserted sometimes in videos that get our kids' attention, it's really a toxic sewer. I'm sorry. There are also great things, and I don't think I'm down on social media. It's just more our brains. That's where our well-being resides. That's where our thoughts about ourselves, that's where the habits. So it becomes how are we teaching our kids intentional habits to take care of their psychological well-being?
Yeah. And really, that's really what your book, is all about, like raising that mentally fit generation. I mean, again, it sounds like, I'm an old person here, but it's not the same as it used to be. It's way more complicated, way more intense, way more connected. Like you said, it's 24/7, 365 days of the year, any moment you can plug in amygdala, get it fired up, get something going. And so, how do we help our kids and adults too, negotiate this,
Yeah.
in a really good way, a healthy way, because like you said,
A
there's
healthy
some
way.
great things and there's some not so great things. Yeah.
Yeah. And that for me is the particularly really worrying part, because if you get hooked on the adrenaline. So as a teacher, I know our children's reading habits have changed since social media has come along. They've actually done studies now, and research has shown kids will scan the outside of the page because that's frequently where the things are that are giving them the clues. So before going to read a text, they will go round the outside of the page because that's what they're used to doing on social media and on the internet.
Wow.
And so when you look at that and go, if that's what they're doing when they're not online, we need to really figure out and go, how can we give them some healthy social media habits? But also, how can we, because if you buy into, as you said, Jason, you have intentionally, to a certain degree, cut the social media or cut the media out of your life, other than using it for business tools.
Yes.
And the mainstream media, you've decided, you know what, I'm choosing certain aspects of that, whether it be the Fin Review or the ABC. I get that. And you were asking about COVID. I actually said to parents last year, find one source of information, most probably, and this was to take care of their own well-being. Take it for 5 to 10 minutes to find out the information you need to know, then switch it off for the day.
Yes.
Because that constant hourly, almost minute-to-minute cycle really can spin us in a downward spiral. And what happens is when we start being concerned and anxious, the amygdala starts firing, prefrontal cortex shuts down, so we're not particularly rational. It's almost like a hit of, it's not even serotonin, but it's a hit of instant gratification. I've got to find out that information. I've got to find this out. I've got to find that out. Now, in life-threatening situations, e.g. bushfire, absolutely understand you have to be up to date. But with a COVID situation, you know what? Find out the information you need that day. Don't keep cycling through it, and then go, what do I need to set up my day well? And that's where we have to do for kids as well, because as you said, it's those habits. How can we protect their psychological well-being without having them so switched on?
Yeah. It reminds me of a book. I'm pretty sure Sean Acor, I think it was called the Science or the Secret to Happiness or something. He does
Happiness Advantage. Absolutely.
Amy the Unicorn on TED. It's a hilarious talk. But yeah, he just said, very similar to what you're saying right now. It's like a certain amount of information will trigger stuff, and it can influence your whole day, and your intellect drops and so on. So let's change gears here and sort of talk about sort of these 10 components in your book. If we could do maybe a little bit of a little conversation about each of them, because I think they're powerful, and like you said, they can be for adults as well as kids. And, I think often both you and I know as teachers, we actually learn a lot by teaching things too.
Seriously, I teach the things I most need to learn. So it is when you really look at it and you go, especially, and that's what I say in the book, I'm not a perfect parent. You will read things in there and go, oh, Kari does that as well. Yeah, I've had moments where I'm cranky, Mitchell was cranky, and snot was going everywhere. He was tears, and it's a mess. And you'd realize I screwed up. And it's just knowing, you know what, I'm not a perfect parent. I'm not a perfect person. I own those faults. I'm trying to do better. I'm trying to learn from that. And I'm trying just to share some really easy techniques. But that's why I guess the first one I really talked about was teaching brain basics. Our kids need to know about their amygdala.
What's that mean? What would that be?
What's that?
Compressed
really compressed into a minute or so. I like if they wanted to talk about a really easy whole brain child, or it's like there's your hand, close your fist under it, wrap your fingers over. Then the brain goes woohoo and has a bit of a flip when you flip your lid. For example, Jason, I don't know if you do it. I used to before Mitchell was in the backseat of the car, but a bit of road rage really. And somebody would pull in front of me, particularly if it was a really close. Until one day Mitchell went, and somebody did it, and I realized, oh, I have a parrot in the back seat. And I realized, what's gone on with road rage is that my amygdala's taken over because I was concerned and it was fearful. Possibly I would have been in an accident if that. So where our brains don't even they don't even process this on a rational thought level. So it's not, and that's what we need to teach our children, particularly if we're talking to teenagers about these and the amygdala firing off, is that, you know, when you hear a ping, possibly your amygdala goes, oh, quick, you've got to get that, because just like fight or flight, you're going to miss out. People are going to think you're stupid.
Yeah.
We are a herd animal. We don't want to miss out. We don't want to look foolish. We don't want to look like we're not in on things. And that's why that's where the amygdala takes over. So when anything like that happens to our kids, what happens is the prefrontal cortex goes, woohoo, taking a bit of a holiday, because the amygdala takes over and says, you know what, I've got this. I'm going to protect this, going to get us out of there.
Yeah.
That's what, and we teach our kids, you know, how can we, if we can feel that happening, if we can feel getting anxious, what are the strategies we can use? We could use some deep breathing. We could use some figure 8 breathing. We could go for a walk. We could use visualization. So it's starting to understand that and really teaching them that, because if children don't understand their brain, it's also teaching them about, you know what, your brain needs lots of water to function well, and it needs good food and those sorts of things. So it's really having that conversation. And then from there, I rolled into looking at optimism, because once there's brain basics, we really need, it's not about being an optimist or a pessimist. We are all, we can all sit on that scale. Optimism and pessimism are actually, it's a scale. It's not one or the other. You're not just an optimist or a pessimist. What it is looking at and saying, do you think more optimistically or do you think more pessimistically? And if you think more pessimistically,
you can help the kids learn, you know, learn a different part on that scale. Is that part of the process? Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we teach, is that how do we teach more optimistic thinking? How do we develop more optimistic thinking? Because if they think pessimistically, it's like us as adults. What will start happening is that becomes a downward spiral, and that then spirals into heightened levels of anxiety, depression, and self-harm.
Yeah.
So what we look at is saying, how can we develop optimism? And there's a whole wide range of strategies looking at that. And it's also challenging sometimes, because in a world filled with negative news, it's hard to be, it's more difficult to be an optimist, because people go, oh, you're just Pollyanna. And I know people, what's Pollyanna? Because that's an old term. But you are just, oh, it's all sunshine, rainbows and lollipops. No, it's not about being that. It's actually being a realistic optimist, saying, you know what, life is hard. There are going to be some crap times, but I know I can get through it. I know I've got hope at the end. I've got hope for a better future. And that's how we teach our kids to be more optimistic, looking at a better future, understanding that that's going to happen.
That. And you reckon, so, you know, for parents, can you flip sort of pessimism around? Like, you know, if you, okay, do you have to be the example for your kids for that? Or, you know, what do you think? Because, you know, I certainly know plenty of my relations, they're always, you know, how you going? Oh, you know, and they've got this kind of version of the world. I saw a good meme the other day. What was it? The optimist and the pessimist were arguing over, was the cup half full or cup half empty, and along came the opportunist and drank it. Which
yes, that's right. Seriously, and it is, Jason. That's my concern, is that parents, and that's what the whole book to a certain degree is predicated on. We are the role models. Yes. So if I'm losing my crap, Mitchell is definitely going to be more likely to have an interesting time right then. And the example I was giving was, I was stressed one day. We were going shopping. It was after school. Shops were closing in 15 minutes. I needed to get something. He wanted to look at something. And then it was on, like, as they say, like Donkey Kong.
Yes.
He was having a bit of a problem.
Your energy was up. So obviously that's what he's going to do. Yeah. Yeah.
He matched it, and that's the sort of thing. So if we are spending more of our time in pessimistic thought, that's where our children are going to be.
Yes.
If we are spending more of our time at least with an optimistic outlook, or even a realistic outlook, you know what? Because kids will know. For example, Mitchell knew when I was going for different jobs and different things, because I'd say, oh, look, I've got to prepare for this or do this stuff. And I'd say, hey, and I didn't get it. That's okay. I'm actually going to go I'm feeling disappointed. So I would always discuss the emotion with him. I'm not angry at you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It might look like I'm angry. I'm really disappointed at the moment. I really wanted that job. It's okay. I know things are going to be okay. I'm going to go take a hot bubble bath. So it was, now, this wasn't when he was 4 and 5. It was when he was age appropriate, 9, 10, 11, when he could tell that something was wrong.
Yes.
But it was always being open and saying, these are the sorts of things, because he would notice the difference in my energy, my outlook, my attitude. And children, as I said before, and this is often what we carry from childhood into adulthood, we carry these things because we assume responsibility for them when it actually has nothing to do with us.
And I was just thinking out loud now, because one of the skills that I've learned with working with Jake, which I didn't learn when we had our first 2 kids, was that Jake is very literal, and it's really important to talk out loud, even though there might be this kind of, this thing there. Talk it out and explain it. And I think it's actually gold. And I certainly believe it's actually something that's fabulous. And you're reinforcing it right now with all your kids. Like, so explain how you're feeling, explain what you're doing, because it's important for them to not misinterpret your actions without explanation sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, 100%, Jason, 100%, because what kids will take with them is, that was my fault, when it actually wasn't. It has nothing to do with them unless we explain it and go, this is not about you, beautiful. This, even though at the moment I see, because kids will, if parents aren't having a good time or fighting, kids will pick up on that energy. Is it me? Have I done something? And there's years of therapy that have been paid for by children picking up on this sort of thing.
Well, yes.
But that's when you look at it and go, it's okay, beautiful. Mum and dad, at the moment, we're a bit cross with each other. We're cranky, but it's got nothing to do with you. And it's not about having to disclose anything that's at age inappropriate or disclosing things you don't want kids to know. It's just actually being really honest and open, and helping them take it apart, because as you said, when you help Jake, when you're helping them pull that apart, that's a really key thing, because what you're doing is giving them the skills for life, Jason. You're actually showing to them, this is how I work this through. Because so many of our kids, and you asked at the beginning, why is there an epidemic of anxiety, depression, self-harm, and unfortunately suicide? One of them is the fact that there is so much predicated, they feel, on, I've got to have it all figured out. I've got to be perfect. I don't understand. All of these things, they haven't actually figured out, what? Sometimes life sucks. Sometimes life's hard, and I will get through it. This is, I have other options. I have hope. And that, I know it's a really simplistic, and there's got to be a whole lot of therapy wrapped around those kids and all sorts of other things. But ultimately what we want to start teaching them is, there are skills and you can get through this, and we'll help you.
Yes. Yeah. Totally true. And, just sort of touching on that, that self-harm and some of the statistics around suicide, is there some differences in, girls and boys, is there other things in that sort of space where, we go, okay, well, on one side, this is a better idea and a skill, and another one, I mean, for example, one of the things that I remember picking up somewhere, I can't remember, well, with your sons, don't sit there deep and meaningful staring into their eyes across the table. Go for a drive and have them sit in the passenger seat, right? So yeah, do you know what I mean? Some practical things there,
Yeah, practical things, and particularly it can be for girls as well. It depends on how they're relating. It depends on the topic, because driving is a lot easier. You're looking forward. They can talk. They don't have to feel like they're stuck staring at you, as you said. But another one of my colleagues said for his girls, he used to put on a cup of tea and actually he would show his phone, put it on airplane mode and say, you know what? It is your time now.
Yes.
Like, this is your time. If you want to talk about that. I think it starts from when they're really little as well, because I often say to parents, listening to all their problems, which you see as little things, it can be a giant pain in the backside sometimes. But when we listen to those, those are kids' big things. That's big in their life at the time. So you need to be keeping those lines of communication open. You need to be able to. Now, I'm not saying, because I know working at home, a lot of people have had to work at home and possibly some still are. It doesn't have to be that they overrun your time or things, because I've actually said to kids before, look, when I was writing the book or doing other things, unless you're bleeding, don't come and annoy me. And even if you're bleeding, unless it's really spurting out of an artery, not a good idea. It's that sort of thing where you can set boundaries with children. We can teach children to respect those boundaries, but always give them the time. If they've come to talk to you, look at them in the eyes and say, oh, at the moment, I've got to finish this, but in 2 minutes, can you wait 2 minutes and I will be there? Then be there and be fully present. That's the one thing. Be fully present. Look in them, get down on their level, look in their eyes. And if they're teenagers, take them for a drive, get a cup of coffee or whatever and go, hey, even if you just want to sit side by side, I'm here. Or sometimes Mitchell, I did back to back. So he and I would sit and we'd and looking at stars at different times of the night or different things and having those talks and being there, because ultimately for girls and boys, and you were asking about the statistics, unfortunately in Queensland at the moment, we've lost 4 young ladies in the first 2 months of this year already. And they went to very good several of them went to very good private schools from wonderful families. There is an epidemic out there that's taking our kids, and we need to do something different. And I guess this is not plugging the book at all. It's just I guess why I wrote the book was because I don't want to wait until kids have fallen off the cliff. I want to give parents and educators the tools and skills to build those strong fences at the top so our kids don't keep falling.
Totally.
And that's why, because ultimately it's about being connected. Our kids desperately want to connect with us, even though sometimes, Jason, I know you'd be going through this because I definitely went through it with Mitchell. They'd be pushing you away and they still want to know mum and dad care, or mum and mum, or whatever your family, they care, they're there, they love me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's kind of like, if you get a chance to work out what's going to work for you and each child, and the earlier you kind of get a bit of a pattern going or a bit of a system going, maybe the easier it might be, so that's great. That's a great suggestion, so no, I love that. So, there's a few more things in there. Managing emotions, and you and I have done a bit of work around this in, Kerwin Ray and Tony Robbins and stuff like that. Emotions, they can be a untamable beast often sometimes,
And that's the thing. You said it before, you talked about self-awareness. A lot of our little people don't have self-awareness because they're living in environments where their adults don't have it.
Yes.
And that's why as adults, we need to really look at our emotional intelligence and to say, are we self-aware? And how are we managing ourselves? Because if you manage your anger by banging, not somebody, but even if you just put a fist, like you whack something or something, you can better believe that the children or young people in your house are going to have similar coping styles.
Monkey see, monkey do. Is
absolutely.
Kind of, yeah.
And so it's, how do we teach them about that? And one of them, have you seen Inside Out, that beautiful movie, Disney movie?
It's awesome. Yeah.
It's a classic. I often say to parents, look, that's the 5 emotions. And unfortunately in Western society, we generally only talk about those. There's also discomfort, disappointment. There's content, peaceful. There's all this emotional language that we don't use. So instead of just being happy, sad, angry, disappointed, rage, fear, there's actually a whole other gamut, and we need to tame it. As Dr. Siegel says, name it to tame it. Yes. So when you can name an emotion, you understand it. And particularly with Jake, you'd most probably be, as well as your other kids, but Jake particularly, let's name the emotion. And sometimes
we've
kids
got a big chart
feel
on
emotions.
The wall, and there's about 50 or 60 on there, and we do it all the time together. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, hey, I'm feeling like this today. And
Yeah.
it's, you don't always have to be up or happy. This
No.
book is not about, being up. That's actually called mania, and it's a problem. So we don't want
Yeah.
people who have that. What we actually want is what's realistic. It's, sometimes it's sad days. Sometimes we have a day where we're just feeling flat. That's okay. But how do we take care of ourselves on those days? How do we understand that's the emotion I'm feeling? And I don't have to snap or bite people's head off. This is how I can manage it, because until they get that self-management right, looking at their relationships with others is going to be more difficult, because all of us would have seen our little children, if they bite somebody or whack somebody, they're not going to want to be played with anymore. So
No.
that's
Yeah.
the thing of, how do we teach them to manage their emotions appropriately, or for society, and then how do we teach them to interact with others?
Totally. Yeah. Well, there's recognizing their strengths, making friends, encouraging kindness and empathy, fostering gratitude, learning to fail, working on self-mastery, practicing mindfulness. If anyone wants to sort of, dive a bit deeper, like, I encourage everyone to grab the book. It's fantastic. But the one I probably want to maybe just jump to, and it's one of my sort of my favorites in my world, is learning to fail. And learning to understand, for me personally, understanding failure wasn't failing. It was learning a whole new set of skills about myself and other things. So, talk us through that one, because like you said, it's not this cotton wool thing. So, sometimes, well, if you listen to certain sources of media, the cotton wool generation, whatever that might be, but, talk us through that one.
It's actually saying and getting them to understand a fail. I don't use the word, well, if people use the word fail, or if a kid says to me, "Oh, Carrie, I failed." Hey, tell me more about that. What do you think? Because I said fail for me means first attempt in learning. That's all.
Yes.
It's just
Like
that was your first attempt. We've got other attempts. We can try again. Look at Thomas Edison. And I know that's a cliche, but I say to them, look, Bill Gates didn't get his first computer right. Steve Jobs didn't get the first Apple phone right.
No.
These are the sorts of things that it is a first attempt. And you don't often, and I say to them, do you think Beyonce gets the songs right every time? No, she has lots of attempts. If you saw her first cut of a song, it's very different to what we see when it comes out. So it's just saying to them, it's okay to fail. It's okay to be uncomfortable, to not come first, to not. Now, the other thing I predicate this, but I was going to say to not get A's. If they did not put in the effort, then that's something we also need to talk to them about.
Yes.
Is that if they're going, I was an ace, well, what might have caused this? What happened that is different than what you did before? So if you were getting A's before, and sometimes this is really, particularly if I'm working with kids going from year 10 to year 11, this often happens because it's a big jump, and particularly into
we're going through that with our two older ones now. Yeah.
Yep. And so it is a large jump. And what happens is what they realize is, okay, I was doing this before, I might have to do something different this time. And again, it's not saying to them that they failed. It's just saying we might need to change tack. We might need to try something different. And again, when kids come out and go, oh, I failed, I'm not good at this. And I often say, you're not good at it yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can actually get better. We can get better with practice, whether it be investing in property, whether it be doing our times tables, whether it be lifting weights at the gym. You don't just lift weights once and look like Thor. Like Chris Hemsworth does that every single day to get that result. So if you want certain results, we're going to need to do something. And just because you didn't have that on the first attempt doesn't mean that you're a failure or that it's not worthwhile trying.
Yeah, and I think that's that's a golden one, first attempt in learning. I love it, and if anyone can take it away, because at the end of the day, you're dead right. There are so many examples that we often forget to remember or look at, because I think potentially the world of social media sometimes portrays get rich quick, instant fame,
Absolutely.
instant awesomeness. Yeah.
A slice in time. And what I say to my kids is, you're seeing the highlight reels of
Yes.
somebody's life.
Yeah.
You don't actually see the grind that they've put in. And I think the reason we as parents don't like doing this, Jason, is because it's a brain neurology again. So when you go through and you read the part about the teaching brain basics, we have something called mirror neurons.
Yes.
And our mirror neurons, when you see, so it's like a monkey watching another monkey eating a banana. That monkey that's not eating the banana will start salivating and will want that banana and will almost feel like they're eating the banana. When we as parents watch our children go through something difficult and something painful, whether it's falling out of a tree, falling out with friends, getting a D, that's actually painful for us. And that's a piece of our heart walking around outside our body, and we want to protect them.
So
But the problem
true.
is,
So true.
yeah, you just go, if we are being overprotective, and often that's where parents go, oh, no, it's going to be okay. Sometimes it's not going to be okay. Let me tell you, if you have to, the other side, so for teenagers particularly, if you don't let them fail sometimes, so if you walk in, say, for example, so it might be, well, Jake would most probably be a different example, but your middle child, boy or girl?
Lily, yeah.
Lily. So if Lily didn't do her assignments and you walked into the teacher and said, you know what, hey, had some stuff going on at home, but look, Lily needs extra time. Is that okay? And the teacher teacher goes, no. And you go, come on, I'm going to go see the principal. And, all right, I'll give in. That's not teaching Lily how to cope with failure. That's actually teaching Lily, you know what, Dad will always pull me out of the situation. Dad will always do something to do that. Sometimes they have to face the consequences. It needs to be natural consequences. So if Lily didn't get the assignment done on time, hadn't put the work in, then her getting a half mark or whatever, I thought, well, you didn't fail, but these are the consequences of not doing what you needed to do. And that's what happens in life. Life is not about all rainbows, unicorns, and lollipops.
No.
It's not going to be easy if you don't do these things. And that's where I say to people, let kids fail. Allow them to be comfortable with not always being the winner. That's why, sorry, and I know I'm on a tangent, but it's the races at school where they all get ribbons. Absolutely. Congratulate them for participating, but not everybody gets a ribbon in life.
Well, that's
so
not real. That's not real
gets,
life, is
no,
it? Not everyone wins. And sometimes, you got to work out where you put that, and whether winning is important to you or not this time, or whatever it is, and what you want to sort of get out of. I completely agree with you. Yeah. No, I love it, mate. And probably, one of those little sort of takeaways too is like, we're not trying to fix anyone. We're just trying to help our children. They're not broken. We're not broken. Like you said right at the start. We're just trying to help everyone with some tools that they can help themselves with. And then maybe help their kids learn some of these tools and lessons and techniques as well.
And I guess, Jason, that's something, I know we're winding up, but that's something I really want to say. This is not about anybody being broken. We are all trying the absolute best for our kids. We want better for them than we want for ourselves. That's what we want them to have a better world. That's why we're interested in doing other things. We want them to have better lives, to have things that we didn't experience. That's what we wish for our kids. And so what we're doing is trying to give parents the skills and tools that, like when we get a car manual. It says these are exactly what you have to do. This is not about exacts. This book is just saying these are some things that we know that science has proven, and I guess that's the one thing, they're evidence-based. Science has proven that these increase both our psychological well-being and their psychological well-being, so that they can have a future generations, and that will also impact the way they parent.
Yeah. The knock-on effect, the pass it, the pay it forward effect. Yeah, is beautiful and wonderful. Well, Kari, it's been amazing to chat with you today, and I know we could continue for another hour or two, I reckon, because there's plenty in there, and it's certainly one of my passions, working with young people, being a teacher myself, and your 28 years of experience are amazing to draw on as well. But one question I do ask every single one of my podcast guests, because the podcast is called The Wealth Faculty, and there's two parts to that. The faculties of your own personal wealth, which one, you are certainly an expert in understanding where it's your mental faculties, managing your emotional faculties, and then on the other side, the faculty of experts and people you surround yourself with to help you, grow your wealth. And it doesn't necessarily mean money, but what is the true meaning of wealth to you, Kari Sutton?
Interesting question. But the true meaning of wealth, I look at wealth so physical health, psychological health, and financial health, spiritual health. So it's a holistic wealth for me. It's not just one or the other. If I had all the money in the world, and it's interesting, I was working with a very wealthy gentleman years ago, and his wife had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and he said, Kari, I'd give all my money in the world.
Yes.
All my money in the world, but I can't change it. And that really has set my life perspective, which is, if you have all the money in the world, but you don't have physical or psychological health, you're never going to have it. So it's, for me, wealth is actually being a holistic approach and making sure that I take care of every part of that, because I can't actually be financially wealthy if I don't take care of the spiritual side, the psychological side, and the physical side, because I won't be able to do the things I need to do. And taking care of my brain, taking care of my mental health and physical health is, that's a holistic thing for me.
A holistic approach. Yeah, you can't be wealthy somewhere and then bankrupt in other places. It doesn't necessarily pan out very well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's been wonderful. Thank you for joining me on the Wealth Faculty today, Kari Sutton. Wonderful chat.
Thank you for having me, Jason.
All right, cheers. Take care.
Hey, thanks for joining us on the Wealth Faculty. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you subscribe. Where all good podcasts are found, you can find us there. And if you want to watch it, you can subscribe on YouTube, Positive Mentor TV. And until the next episode, take care. Bye for now.